And you're very welcome back to another episode of the Women's National League podcast here on finewhistle.ie with myself, Breifne and Aaron, and of course, as ever, Aaron Clark joining me for a look back at the weekend's action. Maybe a look back over the last couple of weeks. It's been a little while since we've had a show. We'll talk about the Galway situation that's been on everyone's minds over the last couple of days. And of course, next weekend's action as well. Aaron, you're very welcome back. It's been a little while. How are things?
Been a while, been busy, but it's good to be back.
You've been gallivanting as well because you've been following the girls in green all over Europe for the last couple of weeks, specifically to Slovakia for that World Cup qualifier. Win was achieved. We've seen it all over all the papers and all the media over the last few weeks and months, I suppose. Really, it's been a phenomenal just a phenomenal campaign for the girls in green. But the media and the public really seem to have bought in now in terms of attendances, in terms of coverage. Obviously, we've both been part of that over the last decade or so, but it must be nice to see that growth from your own point of view in the women's sport coverage over the last few months and years.
Yeah, it's great. Like, you look at the FAI said the other day, it was only a year since Sky come on board, and you can see the massive difference they made. You walked into Tala on the Thursday before for the Finland game, and everything is decked out in Ireland. The girls' faces are everywhere. There's none of the Shamrock Rovers stuff up. It's all about the girls, and you normally don't see that. You normally see the Shamrock Rovers stuff in the background. Any little thing, the commentary box where RT normally sit up, or the pundits sit, was all replastered with all the girls' faces, and you just look at things like that. I think Emma Duffy, a journalist from 42, shared a picture before the game during the 20 by 20 campaign, and you're looking at the south stand and the east stand are empty for qualifiers, and we had the crowds where everybody looking for tickets. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a debacle with tickets. The FAI have come out about it, where 1,000 seats ended up being empty. But yeah, it's great to see that there is that buzz there. There's that excitement there, and it's been an interesting campaign to say the least. We haven't always played our best. Everybody will admit that, but we've been getting results. And like, you just think about the results in Gothenburg, the results in Helsinki, and then the result in Seneca last week. And it's been great to be at them all. You can just see how much it means to Ireland. And we're not finished yet in this campaign. It's exciting times ahead with the playoff to come.
Yeah, we're going to hear more about that when we chat to Louise Quinn. We spoke to her a little bit earlier, and we have her thoughts on how it's all gone so far, right from the heart of the camp. It's been a fantastic journey for the sport. I remember going to games back in Belfield and Richmond Park, and you knew everybody. There was a couple of dozen people there, maybe only a dozen or so above and beyond friends and family and FAI staff. It's come a long, long way that we're now giving out that there's empty seats in the stadium, that people didn't get the chance to fill them in one of the biggest venues in the country. Is that something the FAI have got right, in your opinion, over the last few years? Because leaving those seats empty, like, is that acceptable anymore?
I don't think it is, and you can hear Vera Pauw had a good pop at them in the pre-match press conference in Slovakia to say it's on them people who bought them tickets to come, but it looked as though it was patches, so maybe it was teams and things like that didn't come where the FAI were trying to promote that. I know the FAI have come out and said their marketing division will be looking carefully at that, but like, there's a couple of things that the FAI have done good in terms of tickets and stuff like that. They've gone away from being the season ticket holders get just free tickets into the women's games and that's it, where now they sort of gave them access to a pre-sale and said, listen, if you want them, go buy them, you have early access. And that's been better, because that in itself has also helped to get rid of some of the empty seats. And like, I'd love to see Tala completely full, especially after the weeks you're seeing sold out, and then for it to be it was disappointing, but thankfully the girls delivered with the result on the pitch. But I do think you're right in what you're saying. Like, you look back at the years where I remember a Spain game at 2 o'clock on an afternoon where the FAI were sort of paying for buses for school kids to come to the game and all, just to get people in. And now they're sort of not having to really commit to that sort of thing, whereas people want to come and watch the girls because of what they're doing. And if we could be successful in the playoff, it would bring it to another level. There was still bits of talk around the Aviva Stadium this, the Aviva Stadium that. I think we need to get our house in order with Tala first and get it properly sold out before we can start looking at doing things like that. There was 2,000 free tickets given for the Finland game, and not all of them seemed to be used, but it was a great atmosphere. Great to see so many kids there. And, you're looking at some of the next younger generations who are in the crowd. Like, there was a photograph of Katie McCabe's sister standing in the background as Katie was signing autographs after the game, and then Katie's sister Lauren goes and scores for the under-16s against Wales. You know, it's sort of inspiring the next generation to come along and see where they can bring Irish football.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the current generation, one of the leaders of that current generation is, of course, centre back Louise Quinn. She's a stalwart with a number of clubs over the years. She's currently in the Championship in England, WSL 2, with Birmingham City, riding high in that competition at the moment after just the first 2 rounds have been played. They're currently in 3rd place. But more importantly, she has been key to Ireland's progress over the last few years, and particularly in this campaign, she's been one of Ireland's main players. So let's play the interview. Myself and Aaron had a chat with her before we shot the show tonight. Let's hear what she had to say to us. Now join us for the next 10 or 15 minutes or so to have a chat about all things women's national team over the last few weeks is Louise Quinn, well known to anyone who follows the sport across the county. And of course, a former player in the Women's National League herself, winning the league with Peamount United back in the early seasons. It's been a bit of a journey since then. She's been to Sweden, she's been to Italy, she's been in numerous places across the UK. And you might even have forgotten about 1 or 2 spots as well. You've been globetrotting so much over the last decade. But Louise Quinn, you're absolutely very welcome to the Women's National League podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. Very nice. Thanks for having me, lads. You're more than welcome. We've been trying to have kind of some of the more established international players on over the last few months since we've been doing the show, but it's proven very difficult to get availability and to get with your schedules and stuff. But first of all, I suppose, how have the last few weeks been for you personally? It's been a really momentous thing for Ireland to finish 2nd in the group and get into this playoff qualification process for the World Cup. Yeah, I think it's just been really special, to be honest. It was hard to describe in moments. I think it was just even getting, having the struggles that we did for the Euros to then kind of, go above and beyond kind of, I suppose, what we wanted to in a World Cup as well. I think, we're all quite understanding of how difficult it is to qualify to get out of the European stages. And so to kind of in that group where obviously, such a top team like Sweden, a massively up and coming team like Finland, and then a team that, which I feel its ranking doesn't prove the quality of the team that it is, Slovakia, and obviously Georgia. Still, we had very good results against them, but they actually had some very good results against all those other, not winning results, but they made it out kind of tougher than than maybe our games went, but they were still a team to be kind of very careful of. So I think for us to get where we've gotten now, it's a little bit dreamy, but that's the thing. It's still ongoing. We can still do so much more, and to kind of finally kind of reach those expectations, even just of ourselves, not of the the kind of external factors and external media and people and fans. I think we really needed this for ourselves.
Louise, you talk about the last campaign, like it must have been hard to pick yourself up off the floor, especially with the result in Ukraine. You're going there after beating them in Tala, the results are going your way. I think the 2 games that probably stand out in that group was Ukraine away and Greece away. It must have been hard for a lot of players to pick themselves up because we thought we were almost there for the last Euros. Yeah, it was in stages. I remember that Greece game. Really, it kind of really broke me a little bit. I really felt the effects of that game. I just, even at the stage, you maybe don't know how much of a hiccup it might be, but it's just a defeat like that. Or sorry, I'm saying a defeat. It felt like a defeat, a draw, to kind of give it away in such a late stage of the game was devastating. And I think we were still able to. That's football. That's sport. You have to pick yourself up. And then it kind of came down to this one game, and I think it was pressures that we hadn't really felt before. As a team, maybe a little bit as individuals, but as a team, we hadn't really faced that. And I think,
there was maybe that little bit of nerves behind it, inexperience, with that group of players. It was almost kind of, we almost didn't talk about how important the game was, I think. And I think to kind of get it out and express how you're feeling, if you're nervous, if you're anxious about what's going on, if you're, just how you're feeling, I think was really important for us. So it did that, again, after that Ukraine game, really, really difficult. Probably, the lowest point of my international career, and it was only so recent. But I think as soon as we had our break, we were able to get kind of back on track, have and then we openly spoke about how tough that was then. And then we pretty much scheduled some of the hardest games of our careers as well, against some top opponents, higher seeds. As we know, it was 6-7 losses in a row. But I think it was then we learned so much about that. We learned kind of in ways how to lose, how to close off opponents, how to keep scorelines down against better opponents, how to attack, how to score goals. And there was just so much taken from that. And I think we all just grew as players. We knew kind of some of the things we did wrong, and we're only human, and that's going to happen. And you get put in these situations, and it just kind of feels like we've come over that in a big way. We still have a long way to go. We have no doubt about it. But again, for us to kind of get to this stage, we're incredibly proud of ourselves as a team, and how we've just gotten even closer as a squad is something special.
Most people try and do a crossword some days of the week. Trying to solve out exactly what happens now for Ireland's women's national team is a little bit of a puzzle for a lot of people. It's very complicated. Can you break down what exactly is required now for Ireland to get to that World Cup?
Yeah, so obviously now there are 2 playoff games in October. We've managed to skip the first stage of it. So there's 2 games on the 6th and the 11th of October. So we will play our game on the 11th of October, either versus Austria or Scotland. And then obviously there's the other group games going on. So even in that little pool of nine teams that got a best second, we get into the top 3 of those 9 teams, which then essentially mean we skipped 1 game. And then resulting in that, so whoever we play out of Austria, Scotland, if we win that game, let's say we win that game, and then Switzerland and Iceland, who are ranked above us in that little top 3, if they also win their game, their 1 game that they have, that's when we'll have to go to New Zealand and play in the next kind of sort of round of playoffs against other continents, your South America, your Asia, all kind of one of the African teams as well. So, and then the way to skip that and hopefully just win our 1 game and go straight to the World Cup is if your Switzerland or Iceland lose, if one of them teams lose their games, because we'll take their ranking. So out of this little pool of 3, the top 2, if they win their game, they go through. So very complicated. Everyone has tried. I don't know if I've simplified that in any way. It's all logical in my head. I can see it, but sometimes explaining it can be very difficult. But yeah, listen, that's something that's kind of out of our hands. Something that we can't, we've just again got to go on and win our game, and then just kind of see what happens, see if luck is on our side. But first and foremost, win our game, and at least minimum get to New Zealand in February.
I remember Breifne, just even when the final whistle went in Tala for the Finland game, us in the press box are already starting to work out what the Ireland need to get this advance into the second round. And you're watching it go by as the weekend goes on. You're watching your teams do as a favourite. You're sort of like, okay, nice. And then even for you, Louise, what was it like then in Slovakia? There must have still been some nerves because of the fact that you knew it was in your hands again.
Like, yes and no. Obviously, again, you want to do the best that you can. I think that kind of being able to skip the first game of the playoff on October 6th again was massive. The kind of as we've shown, to have 2 international games in a week is very, very difficult. And then to obviously, you're going to have to do so much external work of your potential, the potential team you may play. So I think it's, for us, it was really big. And it was one of those things where, we'd kind of achieved our goal, get into the playoff. And then, so kind of approaching the game, it was like, you know what, we don't have too much to lose, but we have so much to gain from that situation. We'd still knew that we'd put ourselves in such a great position. So just to kind of get that extra boost, one last game, concentrate on, one of the teams, have a really good build up, have plenty of time together. And that's something that's pivotal in international football. We had 3 days, basically 3 days, 2 to 3 days to build up to that Finland game, potentially the biggest game of our careers. And that's international football. So many teams have to do it, but yeah, it doesn't make it any easier. So kind of to get that, we were more just excited of what could be. And obviously you can look at the game, yes, potential nervy moments, but again, you'd have to do so much problem solving when you're on the pitch at the time. And that's kind of something that can happen. And I think, the week was a draining one as well, kind of emotionally, physically. So for us, I think, for me, there was no stage that we were going to lose that game, but I know moments, maybe you guys did watching it, but on the pitch, we knew we weren't going to lose it. But listen, you want to take more control of those games, and that's something we have to learn and pick up really quick.
I've got one moment for you, Louise. Towards the very end of the game, the Slovakian forward is running right behind you for a ball, and she just cuts her line and comes across you, and the two of you tangle legs. I'd say it was nearly a heart in the mouth moment, because it was right on the edge of the box late in the game.
Yeah, but I was like, that's a free kick. She ran at me. This got said to me after the game, and that was, I don't know, someone was saying it could have been very damaging, and I was like, what are they on about? I have no idea. She, as far as I'm aware, she literally ran into the back of me, and I just went clattering to the ground. I had no idea what was going on, because I wasn't even trying to, shepherd her. I was like, there's the ball, rolling to Courtney, love of courts, pick it up, happy days. And then I get taken out of it from behind. That was my perception. And I tell you now, if I was trying to block her off, or if I was trying to do something, I had no idea she was there. She just came steamrolling through me, as far as I'm aware.
She never left a foul in her life, Louise Quinn. Louise, obviously, we know each other a good while. We probably were involved with teams together before you even got your first cap a couple of years ago now. What's it like now compared to then? I know we're on the verge of a major championship qualification. We weren't a million miles away from that at times during your early years as well with the squad. But what's the difference between the two at the moment? Is it chalk and cheese, or is it really just the same thing, only just a little bit more experienced?
Obviously some things I feel are definitely chalk and cheese. Even to me, obviously playing for a lot of years now, some of the quality of players that I played with back then, unbelievable. And if again, so many, and even at that stage, a lot of them in a professional setup, a lot at Arsenal, a good few abroad, a couple in America. So again, kind of had some of that real experience, but for me, essentially, it's obviously playing at, again now, a completely different pace. Irish players want to bring up the quality and the speed of their play with full time training. Is literally unbeatable. But also for me, it's the backing of the association, to kind of show that they have their confidence in us now, and we're not just a team that they think that had to be there because other teams had it. It was just a tick box of having a women's team, and not having that support, not having what was looking like any progression any investment, either, you know, for home players, or even to have that kind of, you know, that push to go abroad, and we really had to take it into our own hands. You know, and so that's something as well, and you can feel that, to even have, you know, proper communication with the you know, the higher ups in the FAI now. It is something that's massive, and when you have someone who feels like they're backing you, you know, you always have pride in playing for your country, but when you know that there's the support there, to make sure that, you know, we're tip top when we go into international camp, is huge.
How big was that strike? I know nobody likes talking about it, but how big was that decision to go on strike? That 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, whatever. Can't quite remember what year it was, but to take that action and say, no, we want to be taken seriously, we want to be treated equally. Is that the catalyst, or was it all heading that direction anyway?
Yes, that was 2017. Never forget it. You know, that was one of the biggest moments of our kind of international careers as well. To be honest, that was probably one of the biggest and best. And that was something, again, that had started, you know, a few years previous, again, of so many players that, you know, are thankfully still in the squad, and then some that aren't playing anymore. But that was, that those chats for us started happening, you know, the few years previous, and the likes of your, you know, Emma Byrne, she gets mentioned, you know, every time. Anya O'Gorman, who's still in the squad. You know, there's so many there that also kind of pushed us on, and, you know, we would have got a chat from Emma and you know, Yvonne's, and, you know, so many of the girls that were in the squad back then, to say, listen, this isn't for us, this is for yous. And, you know, that kind of sticks with you, that you have to kind of keep wanting to push on. You know, at times it felt like your international you know, career was at risk doing it, but we knew that we were all sticking together. We wanted to do it. We wanted to change, and that was kind of it for me. There was you were hoping, you know, you were scared that there was going to be a different outcome, and maybe a backlash from even, you know, from the outside of, you know, just be proud to play for your country. And that's, you know, you get told that that's a given. That's a, you know, you don't need to tell us twice to, you know, to have that pride of just playing for your country. But it's then making sure that we're given the best to be at our best for our country, and that wasn't given to us and given to so many players, you know, a few years ago. So it was, you know, it was something then that, if it was obviously to go to the, you know, to the media, it was going to be questioned. You know, so in hindsight, there was hopefully not going to be any sort of bad outcome, but I think everything that's happened since then, and everything sponsors that have come on board have shown, that they believe in us and they back us, and we have the talent, and and then the players have put it up to themselves to be in the best shape possible. And, you know, and that's even still players based in Ireland. They do everything to make sure that, you know, they're up to the levels of when we go into international camp, and it shows straight away. You know, Anya O'Gorman is still the fittest in the squad, as far as I'm aware. There's still another 10 years left in her. So it's, you know, for me, it's how the players have taken it on as well, and taken so much self-responsibility to make sure that they're at their best.
Louise, you talk about, you know, leaving how the previous players wanted to leave the jersey and leave the thing. What would it mean for the next generation for Ireland to qualify for a major tournament?
Yeah, listen, it's that, you know, I think that means a lot to all of us. It means, you know, something that you've hope you've made a mark on the game, not even necessarily on the pitch, but off it as well. You want to have that kind of effect, that you're making sure that it's left in the right place. And then, the kind of same talks that we would have got off the girls, a little stern word to be like, keep this going, don't let it drop. Make sure, you know, that for the players to come after that again, that they can keep this going, because the last thing we want is standards to drop, and you know, the quality of, you know, facilities and parity to the men's team. We can't let that drop. It's pivotal for us to kind of keep that going and keep asking questions and knocking on the door. And that's something as well that we can do some of that talking on the pitch. And I think we are doing that now.
Obviously, at club level, you play in England with Birmingham City. There's like a little mini Irish enclave in that squad, though. I think there's 5 of you in the squad at the moment. Like Harriet, Lucy, Jamie, and somebody else who springs to mind. Yeah, and Ryan, of course. So it must be kind of like a home away from home. What's the atmosphere like there in the club at the moment?
Yeah, it's really, really good. Obviously we had a tough season last year and got relegated, but for me again, it was something where the squad was still actually really together, and it's very tough to lose a lot of games like that. But again, for me, the squad, the coaching staff we had there going into the end of the season was excellent, and they totally believed in us, and it was. It kind of, you get to that stage where everyone is given their 100%, and things definitely didn't go our way, even potentially on the pitch with decisions and referees in some of the biggest games that we had, bottom of the table kind of clashes and stuff. And so to have your Irish teammates there, and even at the few days after we got back from camp, we just had a little 5-a-side tournament, and we were Team Ireland, literally 5 of us, and we won almost every game apart from the last game, but we absolutely smashed the rest of them out of the park. But we were just, I don't know, I've never seen us train so well either. I was like, this is the best training session I've had for Birmingham ever. So no, we're just excited, and just, do you know what I mean? It's something where it's great to have that connection with everyone, and that be it then that can transfer into the national team as well.
Who puts the gloves on for the 5-a-side?
Oh yeah, no, thankfully we have like 3 or 4 keepers, so no one was in nets, but it would be Louise Quinn, obviously.
Before we let you go, Louise, obviously you just played at the start of the league. Will we see you back in maybe a Peamount jersey? I'm guessing it's only going to be Peamount, knowing you from back in the day. Will that be something that we might see in a similar way we saw Steph come back for a couple of seasons? Will you finish your career here or there, or have you even thought about it? Has life moved on?
Yeah, I haven't overly thought about it, but obviously then having Ellie here, she's keeping everything up to date. I always kind of keep up to date on the National League anyway, and then obviously having Jamie Finn, who's a big Shells head, so there's always a lot of competition in the changing room as well, where we kind of turn on each other a little bit at times. Healthy competition, but listen, it hasn't something I've been overly thought about, but it would it would cross your mind to obviously go back to where it all began, and hopefully for me it's Peamount that would be that team. So, but we won't think about that yet. I'm happy enough over here now.
Listen, on that note, Louise, I think we'll let you go. Thanks so much for giving us a bit longer than we had planned, but thank you so much for being so generous with your time. As ever, a pleasure to chat to you. Best of luck for the season ahead. I know you're third in the table in Birmingham at the moment, 4 points from the first 2 games. No games at the moment because of obviously the passing of Queen Elizabeth, but I'm sure once you get back on the pitch, we'll see better things from Birmingham this season. So best of luck with all of that.
Lovely. Thanks so much, guys.
So Louise Quinn there chatting to us about what was going on with her at the moment. Sorry, a bit of audio issues. I think Aaron's mic might be a little bit loud. But it's been an interesting few months for the women's team. For Louise, for her teammates, Aaron, your thoughts on that interview?
Do you know what? I think she's right in a lot of things she says, and you look at how poignant that strike was. Looking back now, like it could have went 2 ways. It could have went one way where they're told, listen, go away, it's grand," but it didn't, and the consequences have been massive. Not even just the simple things like changing in an airport or tracksuits or stuff like that. But look where they're staying. They stay in Castleknock. If they can't use Castleknock, they'll use Johnstown House. They have everything they need. There's nobody wants anything. Like my example is, you look at Chloe Mustaki when she tore her ACL. She's on Ireland duty. She has full access to Sport Ireland facilities for the entire recovery to help her make sure it's come true. Would she have had that a couple of years ago? Probably not. And that's the biggest difference. I think the girls have all that sort of opportunities. And I harp on about it again, but mention Sky putting in grants of 25,000, 5,000 for 5 players to do some, to put towards what they're going to want to do after their footballing career. Things like that. Like, that's how much the women's game has moved on. And I just hope for our sake that we do get qualification, if not this campaign, the next one. But it still is exciting times.
Absolutely. Well, I suppose if we cast our eyes a little bit closer to home over the last weekend, some exciting games took place over the weekend too. Putting the results up on the bottom of the screen there for you. You can watch them as we're chatting. But it's very hard to look past Tolka Park and that clash of the top two over the last recent seasons, at least, Shells and Peamount. I think most people expected Peamount maybe not to come out of this game with the win, but they did exactly that. Steph Roach striking late in the game, took all 3 points for Peamount, but it's blown the title race completely open now. We've even got a new leader on top of the table, Wexford's win, bringing them top of the table. It's like a repeat of last year, only in reverse, potentially. Where do you see the next couple of weeks going, Aaron?
Just first of all, Breifne, you're probably a bit surprised to hear this, but I actually was asked my prediction before the game by somebody. I actually said Peamount because I just had that inkling. Things haven't been great at home for Shelburne this season since before the break. Before the break, they played Galway and Wexford, and since then they've only won one game at home, and that was against Treaty United. And they looked as though they're really missing the girls who've gone, and it's having a massive impact on the pitch. The title race is well and truly blown open. Like, you look at what's to come in the next couple of weeks. Like, Shelburne have some big games, Wexford have some big games. But the thing is, Peamount are starting to get that little bit of form. They've won the last 5 league games, and they're starting to inch that little way back in. And it's gonna be an interesting one because Wexford still have to play Peamount. Shell still have to play the likes of Athlone, DLR, some big games, and I just think it's wide open now where we're gonna see a lot of twists and tails, and it's gonna be a case of who doesn't drop as many points. But we spoke just after the break when Shells had Athlone, Bowes, and Sligo, and we sort of said if they win them 3, they've won hand on the title. They got 2 points from them games, and they sort of slid since there, whereas the likes of Wexford have just been consistent, grinding out results when they haven't been great at times. And that's been the biggest difference. And I think from a Shelburne point of view, you could see they struggled in front of goal at the weekend. Neve Burke made one superb save, didn't have to do an awful lot more, raced off her line once to gather a ball, but other than that, she was quite quiet. And the Peamount defence, they just marshalled them. I thought Southall ran the game in the middle of the park for Peamount, and Stephanie would probably be disappointed. She could have 4 or 5 goals on the night, and you could see how much of a relief there was when she did get it, especially with, I know people won't like us saying it, but what the incident that happened in the cup game where there was words exchanged with the crowd, and I think you could see it was down that end how much it meant to her just to put the ball in the net.
Absolutely, but a vital 3 points for Peamount. How big of a slip up will that be for Shells as the season progresses? Only a couple of rounds of games left. It's getting super, super tight at the top. But let's talk about the actual game itself on Saturday evening in Tolka between Garth Brooks. Sounds drifted into the TV coverage, and the TV cameras been there themselves. It just seemed like everything was happening in Tolka at the weekend. A couple of parking tickets, I believe, as well.
Do you know what? We were in the ground 2 hours before kickoff, and it was just because of the fact that the place was mental. Everything was going on around, as you say, with Brooks playing in Crow Park, all the fans and the country western hats and stuff like that. But yeah, everything was rolling towards Tolka. I was surprised the game was allowed to be played at that stage. I would have thought maybe the police the Garda may have stepped in and said, listen, we can't have that because of what's going on so close. Like, there was a stage for the first 20 minutes of the game where, I don't know if it'll come across on the television, but the Garda helicopters flying over the top of the ground, and it was just one of them. And I don't think it was the greatest game of football. I think the purists will say that it wasn't a spectacular game of football. It was more of a bit of a battle, but it was for a game that was on TV. I don't think it was a great game, but I definitely do think the right winner come out at the end of the night.
Yeah, we'll take a look at the league table and all the ramifications of that later on. But maybe let's cast an eye down to Wexford. They had a big win as well. 5-1 winners over Cork City. Christina Dring did open the scoring for Cork, but it wasn't to be their night. Fairly heavy defeat for them. We've seen a few of them this season. But Wexford, it's kind of a fitting statement that they're going top of the league with a big statement win like that.
2 penalties as well from Ava and Clancy. So I think Danny Murphy will be extremely disappointed with that. But you're right. And you look at some of the goals. Ciara Rossler's goal in particular was a superb finish. The way she just broke free. And that's just the way Wexford's been playing. You look at them even a couple of weeks ago. I watched them against DLR Waves and they weren't playing great. But then all of a sudden the switch flipped and scored 3 quick goals, sealed the game, put it to bed. And they have that ability. I think the one thing they've struggled this season against the likes of the Shelburnes and the Peamounts is to find the net. They've struggled to find the net in them sort of games. Like they look at a win against Shelburne. It was a deflected clearance from Amanda Budden off Jess Lawler that went into the net. And I think for Wexford, they're just looking to build along and continue to pick up the points. And if others drop them, they'll be there to capitalise because they're just so consistent in terms of game after game after game after game. And like the biggest thing for them is they're just gearing up towards the cup semi-final against Athlone, and the last 2 games they have this season are Peamount away and Shelburne at home. So they're just looking to keep going and keep. You've got massive leaders in that dressing room with the likes of Kylie Murphy, and I don't think they'll let them stand it slip.
Yeah, there's a few others in there as well. Well used to winning titles down there in Ferrycarrick Park. Are they likely to be the biggest beneficiary of the players we've seen leave Shells and Peamount over the last 18 months or so? Right back to like Niamh Farley, plenty of others that have left since she kind of was the first one, maybe, or Claire Walsh, first one to kind of move abroad. We've seen maybe a dozen girls go from those 2 sides over the last 18 months. Wexford haven't really lost anyone of the same quality.
No, they haven't. And the only real player of note that you can say they've probably lost is Ciara Bates-Crosby, who went to Bohs and is doing well for Bohs. But other than that, they haven't. And they managed to be consistent in keeping players at home. Like the biggest thing is they've kept Ella Malloy so far. They have Ella Malloy through to the end of the season. We don't really know what's going to happen next. There's talk she's going to go to college in Dublin. Will she stay? Will I assume she may stay in Wexford Youth, especially if they do win the league. But that's the big one where the Dublin clubs will probably try and sniff after that. But you're right. Since the likes of Rihanna Jarrett, Claire Reardon left a couple of years ago, there hasn't really been any seasons where we've seen mass exodus from Wexford. And they're benefiting from that because the younger players are getting to play alongside the likes of Kylie. We've seen some of them probably being thrown in at the deep end and Wexford a bit too young, and they've had to either sink or swim. And some of them have swam and been brilliant. And I think the opportunities for them is there because of the fact that maybe they don't have as many so-called marquee names as you'd say compared to a Shelburne or Peamount would at times. But I just think that the fact that Wexford, the togetherness is probably the biggest thing that gets them and drives them, because you come into that group and you're sort of taken under a wing and you're able to develop and grow. And we've seen the likes of Ellen. She's probably stepped on 3 or 4 gears this year from where she has last year, and she's probably right up there for the potential player of the year with the likes of Emily Corbett, maybe Lindsay McKee. And you know, it's for Wexford, you're right, it's just been about consistency in terms of keeping players.
Yeah, they did lose Lynn Craven as well at the start of the year. It would be a reasonably big name, Sinead Taylor in there as well. But on the whole, the exodus has been much smaller out of Wexford. They seem to retain players a lot more, maybe just different ages, different portions of their career that they're in the middle of. Moving elsewhere around the grounds, Sligo twice ahead against Galway, but they too beaten soundly in the end, 5-2 the final score there. Good performance, 5 different scorers for Galway as well, kept them on their toes. We're going to talk maybe a bit more about the other issues in Galway very, very shortly, but let's talk about the game first. Sligo will be disappointed to have been ahead twice and not to have come out with something out of this game.
But it's the same old Sligo against Galway. They've done it multiple times this season where they've been ahead against Galway and been pegged back and then got back ahead, and then they just haven't been able to see it out. I think that's probably the most frustrating thing from a Sligo point of view is their consistency when they're ahead in these sort of games, is to see them out. They're probably lacking a bit of experience in the league as well, which doesn't really help. Paula McGrory just seems to be having fun these days with goals. She's scoring quite regularly for them and becoming quite a key player for them. But I just think it's tough when you when you're maybe reliant on one or two players to get your results, and when if you can't do that in the National League, you sort of need a full 11 players, and I think Sligo have realised that, and how they'll grow from this year will be the interesting thing, because they've had it. There's no doubt they've had probably one of the best introductory years into the National League from any brand new team, but it's about how they can kick on from it for next year. I think for Steve Feeney and the coaching staff, even the players, it's just a case of now it's just seeing the season out, seeing what results they can get, because they've had the great start. It's just sort of fallen away, and they'll be disappointed how bad it's fallen away.
Emma Doherty has been huge for them this season so far. She's been top of the goal charts. She's been banging them in left, right, and centre all season. They've signed her on what looks to be a fairly solid long-term deal in association with ATU, what used to be IT Sligo. That's a fairly big achievement for the club to nail her down, because I don't think people would have looked at the league table and said Emma Doherty is going to stay at the lower reaches of the table, that she might look elsewhere for college or whatever. How big is that that signing for them over the next couple of seasons?
It's huge, but it's something that Billy Cleary has called for years. He's been involved with, I think he's with NUIG now at the moment. It's something he's always called for, that we need to have a bigger togetherness between scholarships with colleges and clubs. And I think this is the first sign of it. But the question you'd have to ask is it just going to be one player? Are they going to try to do multiple players? Are others going to follow? Because there's no doubt that this is probably the best way to help tie the players down to not go to America or not go to England on poor deals, or go to continental Europe on poor deals. But the question is, I think everybody's going to be looking at Sligo to see, how does this work for them? How does Emma get on with the college, and how does she get on with the league team? But to be honest with you, we were probably expecting she wouldn't be there next year. A lot of people were. There was a lot of people saying they'd be interested in her because she's been scoring goals. She's an underage international. And I think it shows that she's happy at Sligo. But the question you got to ask is, how are they going to build around her? What other infrastructures have they put in place to make sure that you can't just sign one player to the college and to the club and say she's there for a long term? They need to have big ambitions to have more, to grow it even more. Because if one player is not going to win you a league, we've seen that. So it's okay. I'm interested to see how much more, what the other plans are from Sligo to get more players involved.
Absolutely, it's a very, very good start for the club, but they do need to push on. I'm sure they'll be quite eager to do so, and maybe the situation in Galway may come to their advantage. I don't think it will, though. I think we're going to have fairly good news in shortly out of Galway. We'll talk about that very, very shortly. Before we do, maybe let's chat about the last two games of the weekend. Treaty United 0, Bohemians 4. Fairly solid victory for them. A couple of new signings getting on the score sheet for Bows as well. And so it's overall very, very happy day for Bohemians. 4-0 down on Markets Field.
They've been good for Bows half. They've been very, if you look at the last 5 games, the only results they've dropped points against is Wexford when they were beaten at home, and Shells when they drew in the league. And last year you would have said, if that's the only points Bows are dropping out of 5 games, they'd have been over the moon. And I think you look at the signings, they've been massive. Neve Farr's been very good. I think Rachel Doyle's probably been the signing of the window for them. She's come in, she's really set the place alight, and she's just contributing massively. I think from a Bows point of view, the only concern is that she's cup tied for the cup semi-final against Shelbourne, which is big. But I think from Bows, they've got good momentum going at the moment, and they're in a real battle with DLR Waves for that 6th place, and that probably would have been their ambition at the start of the season. Can they finish above the likes of DLR Waves? Galway's probably just a little bit too far to catch, but they still have to play Galway, which will be a massive 6-pointer. But from Bows, you'd have to be happy. For Treaty, it's another tough result. Things aren't really, they're not going well there. But how do you keep that ship going? It's a tough one. Like, I remember seeing them a couple of weeks ago against Shelbourne, and there was Don O'Riordan. He didn't have many coaching staff with him either, and it's sort of it seems as though it's maybe a bit of a one-man ship at times, and that's not easy as well. You'd like to hope that they've got get the right supports in with them, and they can build a good structures there, because otherwise we may see Treaty could stay like this for the next couple of years, and that doesn't benefit anybody in the league at all. It doesn't. We need to have that sort of region thriving with women's football.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you, and disappointing to hear if that is the case in Galway or in Treaty, that it's small numbers and small support around the squad. Final game of the weekend, DLR Waves Athlone, two sides who had mixed feelings. They're probably where each other expected to be at the start of the season, if that makes sense. Athlone maybe dropped off a little bit in recent weeks, but both sides disappointed with the draw, or both sides happy just to get another league point on the table?
I think from I listened to a bit of an interview with Tommy Hewitt, and he was disappointed with the result. He said they had a lot of chances in the first half, they just didn't take them. He gave a couple of players an opportunity. From DLRA's point of view, they haven't beaten Athlone all season, and they'd be disappointed with that, because these are the sort of games they'd have been targeting. You're right, they'd have been the team that a lot were saying at the start of the year, who can break the top three? It'll be DLR, and now they're in a fight with both for sixth place. So it hasn't really been the season for Graham Kelly's side. He's been a bit unlucky at times with some injuries and players missing and things like that. But from them, I think they'll be this, for the fact they led as well, to be pipped back again. It seems to happen quite a bit to DLR in the bowl. They get ahead and then they're pipped back for a draw. It's just a frustrating one. They just really haven't got the consistency or the run of results that they would have wanted this season.
Yeah, well, let's quickly take a look at the league table here as we just get rid of the results there. But the Wexford Youths currently on top of the table, 22 games played, of course, 27 the total. So 5 games left for everybody. Wexford, as you mentioned, still have to play Shells and Peamount. Peamount in Peamount and Shells down in Wexford. So we'll be interested to see how those games pan out.
Just on the table, an interesting note on Shelburne. Any time Shelburne have conceded a goal, they've never won again. They haven't won a game this season where they've conceded a goal. They've always either drawn or lost a game.
Wow. Yeah, but only 9 goals conceded, thankfully, for them. Most of them came against Sligo up in the showgrounds, I think. In terms of the rest of the table, of course, Treaty at the bottom, Cork, Sligo, and then Bows and DLR, as you mentioned, in that battle for 6th place. Galway, we're going to talk about them very, very shortly. And Athlone then, of course, joint with Peamount coming into the last couple of games. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. Can Athlone break that top 3? It remains to be seen over the next couple of weeks. We'll chat about the fixtures very, very shortly. But first, we do have to have a little bit of a chat about the biggest news of the week in the league. And that, of course, is the whole situation with Galway WFC and Galway United. I'm actually going to read you very briefly part of a statement that the Board of Galway WFC have put out. And it starts, the Board of Galway WFC have reluctantly decided not to apply for inclusion in next year's SSE Airtricity Women's National League. During the past decade, Galway Women's FC is proud to have brought elite women's football to this region. They go on to thank all the people who've helped them do that, and I suppose give a brief history on the club in terms of what's going on. But basically, it ends up saying, in recent years, with additional costs involved in running a successful club, it has been a demanding time. But Galway WFC is extremely grateful for the support received. It's imperative that the elite women's football remains in the region next season, and we hope that other individuals or entities will take up the mantle to continue the tradition of senior and underage women's football in Galway in 2023. Now, there has been also a statement from Galway United, who came out, I think, yesterday, to have their say in terms of what this is going to be for the next few years. And they've said, all of us involved with Galway United are saddened by the disappointing news that Galway Women's FC have made the difficult decision to cease operations and withdraw from the Women's National League after this season. So they are at the end of the season. They will continue through this year. They talk about the significance of women's football. They talk about the challenges of resources. But they do say at the bottom, Galway United are committed to the development and growth of women's football in Galway. In addition, Luke Comer and the Comer Group have expressed their commitment to support the continuation of women's football at both senior and underage levels in Galway. We will now begin the process of dialogue with all interested stakeholders, which will require the cooperation of all those in Galway who wish to see elite women's football thrive in the West. Galway United is an all-inclusive football club, a club for all of us, and we will be united. So we have asked Galway Women's FC to come on to the show. We haven't received an official response from them either way. So, but they have been invited to partake. But Aaron, we've been chatting off air about this over the last 24 hours or 48 hours or so. What's your thoughts on the situation?
Disappointment. First initially when you see this come out, you're sort of like, not again. We've seen Castlebar fall mid-season. We've seen Kilkenny United come out of the league for other reasons, and you've sort of been thinking, okay, the league is going from strength to strength. Everything in the women's football's on a good buzz, and then you see that. But then the thing is, you also see the likes of the stuff that come out where they're talking about finances and stuff like that, and the budgets and stuff. That's the biggest thing for me. It's just that it's disappointing because the fact of, just it's come mid-season. I said to you, I would have liked to see a statement saying, listen, we don't think we're going to be able to fulfill next year. We'd be hoping if even, come and get me, rather than saying, listen, we're not there. There's probably reasons, a lot more reasons behind the statement than we know in public. That's out in the public at the moment. But that there's some people in Galway who put a lot of time there, being there from the start. For me, it's tough when you look at Galway for the last couple of years, because they've always had some good players, but they've never quite delivered and never quite got over the line. I think their biggest attempt at winning any sort of trophies when they got to a Shield final. They've never really pushed on to where Galway should be, and I think if they had have got to the position that they probably where they should be, it may have been easier to source finances and things like that. But it's disappointing. Hopefully Galway United do come on board and take it on board. But from the statement, it's sort of a case of, it's your turn now. I know there's a lot of talk the FAI over recent years want to sort of have a League of Ireland. Every club has a League of Ireland club. I don't think we're ready for that sort of thing, because it's a massive commitment for every club. But I just hope we hope it gets sorted for the sake of Galway, because there's a lot of players there. While other clubs will benefit, there's not enough places for every player to go around.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I read the statement when it came out on Monday or Tuesday, and I just thought I was disappointed by the language in it more so than the sentiment in it. I just thought it was very defeatist and very almost like we're throwing the towel in here. Now, I'm not trying to criticize any of the people who've done stellar work and hours and hours and hours of their own time over many, many years. And they deserve every bit of credit, every bit of acknowledgement for the work they've put in, for the resources they've put in, their time, more than likely for most of them, their money as well. I know when you run these kind of teams, you end up buying things that you never get refunded for. You never look for the back. You put your own money in to do things, and it just disappears. It enters the black hole, as it's called. I just heard a number of 1,600. I know Stephen Moore came on I was in Galway Bay FM the other day talking about the situation in the club, and he mentioned a figure of a budget of 160,000 euros a year, and that almost floored me. He talked about the first year being they budgeted for 20, they got away with 18, and now it's almost tenfold increase in the budget. But I don't understand where 160,000 has been spent, unless the players' expenses, the coaching expenses have gotten completely out of hand. And like, if every game cost you 1,000 euros to host or to travel to, even with the underage schedules, that's still only 50, 60, 70,000.
I was talking to someone last night, and they were saying, with knowledge within the National League, and they were saying like some clubs are paying upwards of 1,500 quid just to go to an away game for a bus and food, with the cost of things. But it's still, even if you're going to say 13 away games, it's still a massive additional amount on top of that. It's sort of like, and I'd love to know the breakdown. And I think the problem is with a lot of clubs is we don't know what they're paying on expenses. I think I remember Peamount a couple of years ago doing something in a match program where they sort of detailed all their expenses, and it wasn't that high. It wasn't that high, but that was probably a time as well when players were paying subs. So is it a case? Also, I'd like to know is the club paying the subs now, or the FAI still funding it? But the thing is, they've got a lot. There's been a lot of money in the league in the last couple of years with Sport Ireland, with the COVID payments, and I think a lot of clubs have got, like, there's been seasons where I'd say a lot of the clubs were definitely in profit from them sort of monies. So it's difficult without knowing all the ins and outs and all the finer details of what the breakdown of the budget is. We can only speculate on what was that money spent on. But if you were to say to me 160 grand to run a women's National League team, to run 3 women's and 2 underage teams, I would have said that's way too much.
Yeah, but I think before anyone, we're not saying any money when missing or was misappropriated. What we're trying to say is that the resources that people had maybe were inflated with COVID payments, with budgets and with grants over the last couple of years, and these kind of operations, they get a bit. If you have the budget, things can get a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for? Kind of. Just they grow, and budgets know how to get spent when people have resources, and you get extra things. You upgrade maybe where you train. You get better gear. You get a better quality of bus. You provide more food on away trips, and all of a sudden, what should cost you €1,000 is now costing you 1,500, and that's where the creep is setting in.
I've got a question on that for you.
Go on.
Do the clubs have to submit their budgets like a league award with licensing to the FAI, and are these sort of big budgets being improved? Because that's to me, you'd like to hope and say the FAI are approving all teams' budgets, because surely if that was the case, you'd like to say the FAI would step in and say, "Hey, listen, that's way too much. Why are we spending so much on it? Are you sure you can do that?" It's a tough one, and I think. The biggest thing is we all feel for the people of Galway, the people of Galway WFC, some great people behind the scenes, and some great players who've donned the colours, and like we just as people who are involved in covering the league, we just want to see Galway successful in that Galway a successful Galway, and I think for us it's probably more of a frustration that this has had to come to fruits rather than a case of things of what's happened. It's not we're just disappointed that it's come to it rather than anything.
Yeah, I think so. I think the other side of it is, and this is my take on things, is that it's a lot of talk about nothing. In some respects, I think there will be senior football in Galway next year. I think it will be under the auspices of Galway United. I think they'll still be in Terryland Park, provided they can do a deal with the Galway FA. I think a lot of this is purely putting it out there that it costs an awful lot of money to run a team at this level, and they're looking for help. They're looking for maybe some help from the FAI, and that might be beneficial to all the teams in the league, so maybe it's not the worst thing. They're looking for help from the local council as well. I know I heard an interview that was done today with Jonathan Corbett of Galway United, and he talked about reaching out to the council and getting it discussed at council level to see if there's any funding that can be brought to the equation. So I do think this is not going to have a material difference other than maybe what logo's on the jersey next year. I think there's going to be a lot of similarity to the ladies setup in Galway next year, and hopefully it's just posturing between all of the different groups involved. But I think it would be an absolute scandal if women's football was allowed to die in at adult level, at senior level in a city like Galway. It'd be unthinkable for it to happen.
Absolutely, fully agree, and hopefully it resolves itself in the next week or two, next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Well, we're down to 2 minutes to go before the hour, and we don't like going over the hour. So really quickly, let's take a quick look at the fixtures for the weekend ahead. Cork City versus Galway, Peamount United versus Sligo, both kick off at 5 p.m. Bows and DLR Waves still do battle in Dalymount Park, while Wexford Youths entertain Treaty, both those games at 6 p.m. and Athlone and Shells at 7.
No, you're wrong there. Athlone and Shells is 4:30, and it's live on TG Car.
Well, sorry, apologies. Corrected by Aaron, who is the all-seeing, all-dancing thing. But before I let you go, Aaron, you have a minute. Your game of the weekend, what are you looking forward to?
Bows and DLR. It's the game I've been looking forward to for a long time, since the transfer window with the players moving. Bows haven't beaten them in the National League. Can this be the chance? Potentially. That's the one I'll be at, and that's the one I'll be looking forward to most.
Could potentially be a big weekend for all the teams involved over the weekend as well. Of course, plenty of action on that game. Shells in Athlone. Could be another banana skin. Can they afford another slip up? Wexford Youths would be expected to get full marks from Treaty, so Shells need to keep the pressure on them at the top of the table. Of course, Athlone and Peamount will want to say in that discussion as well. Aaron, we're going to finish before the hour. We're going to let them go. Thanks very much for joining me. As always, it's a pleasure to have you here. We'll talk to you again next week.